We honor the Multnomah, Cathlamet, Chinook, Clackamas, Malala, Tualatin, Kalapuya, Yakima, and many, many other tribes whose land we now reside on. We acknowledge that a legacy of displacement, violence, and oppression has brought many of us to this land, and this system continues to perpetuate environmental racism, discrimination, and oppression. It is our responsibility to listen and learn from our tribal neighbors and elders as we work to repair these harms and prevent further damage to this sacred place. If you haven't had the opportunity, please support the Chinook Nation's push to regain federal recognition that was granted in 2001 and was taken away 18 months later. Go to chinookjustice.org to sign a petition or to donate. Before we hear from our really amazing panel tonight, there's just a few things, logistical things I need to run by. First of all, we're really grateful to Trinity United Methodist Church for hosting us in this beautiful space. If you're able, we welcome contributions to keep the future Rumbles free and accessible. There's a donation container on the greeting table in the back there with Bonnie. And big thanks to Mac McKinley. Where's Mac? Where's Mac? Stand up, Mac. Oh, he's getting the breeze. He's still working on things. Mac McKinley has designed every one of our Rumble flyers and our programs. And a big thanks to Barbara Bernstein, who's sitting right up here. She's our videographer this evening. And please make yourself comfortable, move around as needed. The restrooms are located through the back doors there and to the left. And be sure to visit the organizational tables before you leave and check the back of your program for the updated contact information of your elected officials. Staying in touch with them is one of the simplest and most powerful things you can do. Also, a big shout out to our many co-sponsors. Maybe we can, there they are, up there on that tiny screen. Our co-sponsors, without their partnership and outreach, gatherings like this just wouldn't be possible. So they're the ones that make this happen. Their names are listed also on your program. Let's see, how many of you are first-time Rumblers? First time here. All right, awesome. Hey, welcome. Okay. Awesome, and a warm welcome back to all the returning Rumblers. Is there anybody that's been to all 23 Rumbles? Woo! Yeah. Right. You know, we started this, we were only going to do about 3 community forums, but here we are at 23. So like many of you, I'm here tonight, not just because I care, but because I'm deeply, deeply alarmed. We are watching the dismantling of social institutions we once counted on, shaking the very foundation of democracy. For many communities, this erosion is nothing new. It's simply more blatant, more brutal, and harder to ignore right now. But we are not powerless. As David Brooks recently said, we need a coordinated mass movement to stop Trump and build a just, inclusive vision of society, and that starts with each of us. Naomi Klein, in her interview with Amy Goodman about her new piece, The Rise of End Times Fascism, describes the overlap of apocalyptic worldview that binds many working class, elite, and religious extremists. They don't believe in the future. In fact, they're actually fanning fires that are burning the world. We must have the courage to look at the bleakness of this and build a movement strong enough to stop them. A movement that believes in this world, the beauty of creation, one that's willing to fight for the future. And with that, I'm going to introduce our panelists who will share their experiences and their wisdom as we look towards the path forward. A reminder that after our panelists speak, they will have time to answer questions, and you have index cards, so our Rumble folks will come around and collect your questions to answer at the end. And okay, so we're going to start. I'm going to just run through all of them, and then we'll move through. So we're going to start right here with Damon. I want to introduce Damon Motz-Storey. Damon is the director of the Oregon chapter of the Sierra Club. Cano, Candelario, and Jen Slack are with the Portland Contra las Deportaciones. Yep. And Joel Beinin here is an emeritus professor of Middle East history from Stanford University. And Russell Lum is a staff member of the Oregon Nurses Association, and he is a political organizer extraordinaire in many aspects: labor, environment, trade spaces. And we've got Monique Smiley, and I'm going to do both of you together, your team. Monique Smiley and John Wasiutynski. All right. From the Multnomah County Office of Sustainability. Really happy to have you all here. Thank you. What a panel, right? Yeah. Okay, we're going to begin with Damon.
Thank you so much, Jan. Thank you, everyone, for being here this evening. It feels this feels like a weighty topic to take on. So, wow, I'm first. I get to really bite off the big one and chew it. Good evening. It's so good to be with you. Again, my name is Damon Motz-Storey, and you may know me from my work with the Sierra Club Oregon chapter, which is the local chapter of a very large and old grassroots environmental nonprofit that does advocacy and outings and things like that. Or you may know me from my prior work with the Coalition of Communities of Color, which is an amazing and unique alliance of 18 racial justice advocacy nonprofits in the Portland metro area. Or you might know me from my prior work with Oregon Physicians for Social Responsibility, working on climate and environmental issues from a health perspective. I know that many of you are actually in the room right now. Good organization. So I've spent about 9 years in Portland and Oregon helping to support movements for climate and environmental justice. And I wanted to talk this evening a little bit, thinking about the theme of care and community. I've thought a lot about how the only reason I've been able to stick with it for that long is because it has been a supportive community for me, and I'm able to bring my whole self to work and to these social movement spaces. And so this evening I want to talk with you a little bit about who I am and what that means in this moment as sort of a way to talk about the moment that we're in, because it's all a little too much if we just kind of think about the entirety of it all. But I think it gets much easier, and we as human beings are really programmed to think about things in terms of stories. And so I'm just going to share my story with you a little bit this evening. So my full name is Damon Charles Motz-Storey, and the Charles Motz in the middle there comes directly from my great-great-grandfather, Charles Motz, who grew up in a small town in the middle of Germany. And he immigrated to the United States and became a barber in the late 19th century. And other immigrant great-grandparents of mine came from England and parts of Denmark, and the story was all the same. They came here looking for a better life. They came here looking for opportunity and connection that they couldn't find back home in Europe for one reason or another. These people were pretty poor and working class. Barbers weren't making a lot of money in the lead up to the Great Depression, and I think my story is very important to tell after we do things like land acknowledgements, because it helps to take ownership over the fact that my life trajectory and my family's life trajectory diverged so rapidly into the direction of fortune and upward mobility after immigrating to the United States and being a part of the privileged racial group that was able to move up through the world because of inherent and implicit trust and inclusion. But the stories that they tell of the various Black and Latino and Indigenous people that were, known by the family friends, they never had stories that ended up like that. Those families often stayed very poor from generation to generation. Whereas my family was able to find small bits of land in the Midwest and then pass that on to future generations, who were then able to buy houses and get a toe in the door into the real estate market before housing became such an indicator of social class and wealth and privilege. And so I share this, I start my story with sharing this because it's none of this was in my control, but we have to name this because all of us are indigenous to somewhere, and a lot of us white people are not indigenous to this land, and we have benefited from the settler colonial systems of theft, genocide, and wealth hoarding. And I name that not to say that it's disempowering, but simply to remember that that means that I have no choice but to be in solidarity with the very same people who are just trying to make a good life for themselves now, who have to worry about being scooped up off the street and taken to a concentration camp in El Salvador, simply for trying to make a better life for themselves. And so I challenge all of us to look back at what our family histories are, and reach for the empathy and sympathy that we can feel in connection to knowing why we must all stand up for every immigrant today. At about the same time that my great-grandfather Charles Motz was coming to the United States, Germany was going through a really rapid transition and change, and I want to tell one anecdote about that. How many of you are familiar with the Weimar Republic, which was the very first part of the 20th century in Germany? Yeah, okay, so that's cool. I didn't know much about this until recently, but I started looking into it because I'm very interested in the fact that there are certain things like, in 1923, there were nearly 100 gay and lesbian establishments in the city of Berlin in Germany. And there were absolutely incredible advances in institutions and advocacy organizations that were working to repeal the ban on homosexual sex at the time. And they were making incredible advances. It was a time of really unprecedented visibility for gay and lesbian and also gender non-conforming and transvestite people in Germany. Unfortunately, the Great Depression, economic forces, and then the rise of Hitler and the Third Reich came after the homosexual movement incredibly viciously and hard. And I think we probably all know what happens next. The Holocaust, in addition to being, of course, one of the most devastating incidents in Jewish history, was also one of the world's most catastrophic massacres of gay people. And in many cases, when various concentration camps were liberated, they would release many of the folks, but not the gay men who were interned in those different camps, because even the new government was intolerant. And the Nazis actually burned and destroyed enormous amounts of incredible research and art and history that had been archived by the institutions that sprung up during the German Weimar Republic. And so I bring this story up because it's a very curious time in our own history right now, and it mirrors a lot of what was going on then. We are facing our own incredible economic stresses here, which causes governments to have to look for people to scapegoat. And in addition to immigrants, we've all seen the ways in which transgender people have been particularly attacked in the last election cycle and currently in different state legislatures and in public opinion courts all over the country. And many of the exact same dynamics are at play right now. We are experiencing a time of unprecedented visibility for my community, for other queer and trans and non-binary people. We enjoy so much more visibility in TV and movies. Raise your hand if you've seen a film that includes a gay main character. That probably wasn't the case just 20 years ago. And we all, I think, have good memory of the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell. and the fall of Obergefell that banned same-sex marriage. And so those things were all very recent and have led to an unbelievable increase in gay, lesbian, and transgender rights. And with that comes the swinging of the pendulum in the opposite direction. And we make a very convenient scapegoat of a community because we're very small. We're very, very small. There are not very many transgender and non-binary people in this country. And so there are a lot of communities that may not even know that they know someone who feels that way. And in particular, I love to share this quote. For those who maybe know, Alok Ved Menon is this really incredible non-binary storyteller, activist, and comedian. And they were in conversation with the popular Jonathan Van Ness of Netflix's Queer Eye. And they were talking about what it means to be non-binary in the United States and why is it that it's so subversive and so misunderstood and so attacked. The question that Jonathan Van Ness asks Alok is, what is it about being non-binary and trans, or what is it about non-binary and trans people that is so threatening to these systems of power? And Alok responded like this: we represent possibility. We represent choice, being able to create a life, a way of living, a way of loving, a way of looking that is outside of what we've been told that you should be. I'm going to say it again because it's really powerful. We represent possibility, we represent choice, and being able to create a life, a way of living, a way of loving, a way of looking that is outside of what we've been told that you should be. And what could be more powerful of a way of subverting the roles of gender that we've all been told to sit in, you go this way, that the other folks will go that way. There is no greater subversion of those different rigidly defined gender roles than to say that you get to decide where you sit and who you are, and no one else gets to say that that is for you. And I'll say just a moment, real quickly, that we are needed, us queer and trans people, in various social movements because we are so capable of imagining a different and better world and way of life, even when all evidence is pointing towards us not being able to make it through. We have recently survived the HIV epidemic. It wasn't that long ago that we didn't have very effective drugs that could help prevent the spread of HIV and the impacts that it takes. And we've had so many times throughout history where there was no place in public civil society for us. And we intend to not cede any ground. And when people ask me, Damon, would you ever consider leaving the country with everything that's going on here? I always say, absolutely not. I'm not going anywhere because this is my home too. And I'm going to close by connecting all of this back to my roots as a Quaker activist with the Religious Society of Friends. That's core to who I am. I was raised Quaker. It's a faith tradition that is firmly lodged in justice for all people because all people are holy. And Quakers have always been on the real forefront of a lot of social issues like slavery abolition, immigrant justice and the sanctuary movement, and also boycott, divestment, and sanctions of the state of Israel for the ways that the state has enacted genocide and oppression in the state of Palestine. And Quakers are very famous for, the reason we have that nickname is that we stand up and we get very moved in our worship services to share something that we feel has been a message given to us from God to share with the community. And sometimes we're so moved by it that we're just literally physically quaking and shaking as we speak. And who doesn't know what that feeling is like, right? Sometimes when you are standing and it's hard to even get the words out, but you have to say that thing. And Quakers just have this incredible perseverance and insistence upon doing the right thing and striving towards justice, no matter how how hard the odds look and how difficult it might be and how low our chances of success are. It doesn't matter. We have to do the right thing because it's right. We have to stand and speak and minister, even if our voices shake. And that's the energy that I hope to invite you into during these times. It may be difficult, it may be challenging, but we have to do the right thing anyway because there's no other option. And I'll leave you with one more quote from one of my absolute favorites. He often visited in Quaker spaces. His name was Dr. Vincent Harding, and he was a speechwriter for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And he loved the Quakers. He would often speak at some of our larger gatherings. He often spoke that I am and you are citizens of a country that does not yet exist and that desperately needs to exist. And let's build that nation together. Friends, we can do it.
Thank you so much, Damon. Okay, next we have Cass and Jen.
He voted me to go first. So I'm gonna, I have a speech prepared, I'm gonna read it, but I'm gonna apologize for unleashing some really real emotions on you. I'm gonna give you a little bit of background about myself. I am a birthright child, both from German-Irish immigrants and from my grandparents who are from Guadalajara and Guanajuato. Talk about how to handle. I did this last time too, I'm so sorry. So, German-Irish, Mexican, both sides immigrants. I'm new to this world of activism. I was just telling Russ that I was in Mexico City at the airport the day after the election on my first adventure into Mexico, and I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to come back because I feared what I was going to face my own experience. And today I face another bout of racism. Go back to your country, you dirty Mexican. So I'm going to start this off by saying, one, I apologize for the emotions because they're real, they're intense, and it's just going to get heavier. Two, I want to thank every one of you for being here because what you're giving me, this one little tiny insignificant brown person, you're reminding me that what I've experienced today is hopefully a one-off and that you are my community. So I just want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing your time and your space with us. And I'm going to get into my speech and let you all move on. So hang tight while I find it. Thank you. I appreciate that, thank you. Feels like we are these days sometimes. All right, so here's my speech. Today we gather not merely to remember, but to reclaim the spirit of Salilo, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing that, Falls. Once a thriving fishing ground, a sacred site, and a cultural cornerstone for indigenous peoples for over 15,000 years. It's a lot longer than those that came here and took it from us, isn't it? Known as YM, meaning echo of falling water, these falls are not just a geographical feature. They are a living testament to the resilience and deep connection between the people and the environment. In 1957, the construction of the Dow's Dam submerged Salilo Falls, drowning not only the roaring waters, but the livelihoods, tradition, and identities of the indigenous communities that have called this place home for millennia. The Wasco, the Wishram, and the other tribes gathered here are relying on the seasonal salmon The Wasco, Wishram, and other tribes gathered here, relying on the seasonal salmon runs that once surged through these waters, salmon that were not just food, but a vital part of their culture, spirituality, and history. Today we face a critical juncture where climate changes threaten not just our communities, but the very ecosystems that sustain us. As temperatures rise, the waters of the Columbia River become hotter and salmon populations decline. This crisis disproportionately affects indigenous peoples who have maintained a profound relationship with the land and the water, ensuring that these resources remain abundant for future generations. The calls for restoration of Celilo Falls echo louder than ever. Tribal leaders remind us that the submergence of these falls was never agreed upon. Shocker. It was a violation of treaties that guaranteed their rights to fish and access these waters. The dam has not only disrupted the flow life of these, but has also severed the intergenerational transmission of cultural practices tied to fishing, gathering, and community. Just another attempt to take us out. The loss of Celilo Falls is a loss of identity, spirituality, and connection to the land. Let us be clear, climate change is not a distant threat. It is a present reality affecting our rivers, our wildlife, and our communities. The voices of elders who have remembered the roar of the falls, the laughter of families gathered for the salmon runs, and the teachings passed down through generations must be amplified. We must take bold action to combat this crisis, advocating for sustainable practices that honor our environments and the rights of our indigenous people. As we rally today, let us unite our voices in demanding not only the restoration of Celilo Falls, but also a commitment to the environmental justice that, I'm so sorry. Environmental justice that includes indigenous perspective in decision-making processes. We must support the rights of tribes to manage their fisheries, protect their sacred sites, and restore ecological balance to the Columbia River. Together, we can call for a change. We can restore our Celilo Falls, honor indigenous rights, and confront the climate crisis head-on. Let the echoes of water be heard once more, symbolizing hope, resilience, and the enduring spirit of the indigenous people who have fought for their home. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Cass with Portland Contra las Deportaciones. We're an immigrant rights solidarity group fighting for legalization for all and an end for the deportations. I'm deeply thankful for this opportunity to speak, to stand with you in this urgent struggle. Today I'm here to speak on my small part in the immigrant rights struggle. I am a member of you can read the rest. I am a member of Portland Contra las Deportaciones. I mentioned that already. You can read the rest of our pillars on our flyers over there at our table. But in a small sentence, I can define our fight. We fight so that the undocumented can be treated with dignity. This fight isn't a new one. People have been fighting to be treated like equals in this country since very inception. The fight we are in has its origins in 1848 with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. It ended the US-Mexico War, ceding nearly half of Mexico's territories, lands now called California, Arizona, New Mexico, and more, to the United States. Overnight, tens of thousands of Mexicans became strangers in their own homes, their lives upended by a border drawn through their communities. As we fight for immigrant rights with Portland Contra las Deportaciones, we honor this truth. The border crossed us. Since then, millions have crossed the border, residing in those areas once part of Mexico for a variety of different reasons, most of them economic. Those driven from their homes for lack of employment often still have the idea in their head that the trip will be short. I know my parents, at least, never intended to stay here. They always had dreams of returning back home to their pueblo, Rapicho, Michoacán. My mother tells me that only after 5 kids did reality kick in, that this was their new home, and her kids would grow up somewhere where their parents are often viewed as second-class citizens. That wasn't too alien for my parents, as being indigenous, they were treated like that around the city in Mexico. They tell me stories about being called Maria, which is a derogatory term for indigenous people in Mexico while riding buses, and being denied seats and forced to sit in front of the bus driver. Here they can at least have better access to water than in pueblos back home, where soft drink companies have made it so that energy drinks and Coca-Cola are cheaper than bottled water. I remember when I visited Mexico, I couldn't find a single bottle of water, and I asked why, and they explained that, well, we don't drink that around here. Their pockets get deeper and our bodies get weaker. I want to shine a light on another case of global forces exploiting indigenous lands, one that might be more topical to this administration. Billionaire Elon Musk has meddled in various Latin American politics, backing right-wing agendas in Brazil, Venezuela, Bolivia, and Argentina. From tweeting support for a Bolivian coup tied to lithium for his Tesla empire, to attacking Brazil's judiciary on Twitter, Musk's actions fuel resource theft and instability, driving indigenous migration. Portland Contra las Deportaciones rejects this corporate greed that strips our communities bare. The Purépecha, my people, and indigenous communities across Latin America are not just immigrants. They are survivors of centuries of violence. Stripped of their land, their resources, their language, they are treated as the lowest of the low. Colonizers and corporations have plundered their forests, rivers, and sacred places, leaving them with nothing but resilience. Forced to migrate, they carry the weight of displacement and erasure, only to face new battles in foreign lands. At home, they face terror in the face of narco cartels. Just last year, Lake Pátzcuaro, Michoacán, not too far from my parents' pueblo, Rapicho, narco cartels had used vast amounts of water, leading to droughts in the historic Lake Pátzcuaro, just to care for their avocado farms. The fight for immigrant rights is the fight for human rights. It's about ensuring no one is detained indefinitely for seeking refuge. It's about families staying together, not torn apart at borders. It's about fair wages, safe working conditions, and access to healthcare and education for all, regardless of where someone was born. It's about dismantling systems that profit off suffering and building ones that uplift every person. I want to get back on theme and thank the Roadmers again for letting me speak today. I'm glad to have all you as new allies in this fight for immigrant rights. And I want to encourage all you to attend our demonstration in front of ICE on the 21st at 3:30. There's more information at the table over there. And you can find out more about us and what we do. And I want to remind everyone that love makes us strong and that resistance is the deepest form of love. Thank you.
Okay, Joel.
So, you don't get Trump without Gaza. Fascism doesn't just appear, it must be invited in, and the bipartisan repression of the anti-genocide movement did just that. So that is the headline of Ben Ehrenreich's article in The Nation, April 3rd, 2025, credit where credit is due. So here you have, I'm not going to read all their names, but beginning with Mahmoud Khalil, that's the demonstration on his behalf, who was abducted from Columbia University housing and sent off to Louisiana. A dozen university students, professors, postdocs, and so on, who have been scooped up and put into detention. The last name on the list, Mohsen Mahdawi, was actually released on bail, but the others are still either detained or Ranjani Srinivasan fled to Canada, where she was a citizen. Dr. Rasha Alawiya was deported straight off to Lebanon, where she didn't even have a chance to contest that. And this is all going on in part because private groups have worked to identify and report these people to the government, and the universities that they are attached to have given them over. So this is where we are. This is what happens in fascist countries, and that's what Ben Ehrenreich is talking about. He isn't saying that Joe Biden is the same as Donald Trump, or that the Democratic Party is the same as MAGA fascism, but the door was opened. How was the door opened? Joe Biden lied from day one about the war in Gaza. He said, for example, that he saw photographs of 40 beheaded babies that Hamas had done on October 7th. No such photographs exist. It was simply a barefaced lie that he repeated twice, even though the White House had to roll back that claim subsequently. Joe Biden said that Israel was abiding by international law. And nonetheless, we've got, at this moment, some 61,700 Palestinians have been killed in the Gaza Strip. 60-70% of them women and children. Just put a name on one, Hind Rajab, the 16-year-old girl whose family was all murdered by Israelis as they were trying to escape to the south of Gaza. Israel, from day one in the war, used starvation. So Defense Minister Yoav Gallant said on October 9th, 2023, I have ordered a complete siege on the Gaza Strip. There will be no electricity, no food, no fuel. Everything is closed. So while Israeli government officials and many other prominent Israelis were being very clear that they are about to commit war crimes, our president was telling us that Israel is going to be conducting this operation in accordance with international law. So from the beginning, Israel has used starvation as a weapon of war. And it has continued to do so after unilaterally violating the ceasefire on March 18th and escalating even more seriously the starvation and malnutrition in the Gaza Strip, which of course affects children first and foremost. The Gaza war is also an environmental catastrophe. Toxic waste, waterborne diseases, vast carbon emissions. This is what, well, if you can see it, this is what a good part of the Gaza Strip coastline looks like as a result of the war. It's been a total environmental disaster, which isn't limited to the Gaza Strip because the Gaza Strip is at the eastern end of the Mediterranean, so all of that flows out in the direction of North Africa and Europe. Police assaults on peaceful demonstrators and observers. The top two photos are police body slamming professors who were not participating in demonstrations, but were observing them. The one on the right, Steve Tamari at Washington University of St. Louis, is my former Stanford graduate student. The police broke his hand and 6 ribs. And what he was doing was taking a picture of the demonstrations. At UCLA and University of Michigan, there were major police assaults on encampments. I only picked a couple because I can't put any more pictures on the slide. This happened in dozens of places around the country. Attacks on freedom of association. Students for Justice in Palestine and Jewish Voice for Peace were suspended at Bryn Mawr College, at Columbia, at George Washington University, at the University of Vermont, at University of Rochester, at Harvard, and several other institutions. So from the Ivy League to large public institutions, didn't matter. So basic First Amendment rights were openly violated, and nobody in the Democratic Party, except for a couple of handfuls of progressive people in the House and Bernie Sanders, said anything about it. MSNBC fired at the beginning of the war 3 Muslim news anchors, Ayman Mohyeddin, Ali Velshi, Mehdi Hassan, and also fired Joy Ann Reid, who was a very popular anchor for one of their shows as well. So total assault on freedom of the press at the beginning of the Gaza war as well. And finally, from October 7th, 2023 to November 2024, the United States government approved over 100 military aid transfers to Israel, totaling at least $17.9 billion. The total sum of the cost of operations is well over $20 billion at this point. Only 6 of those 100 military aid transfers were submitted to congressional review and made public. In other words, 94 times the Biden administration went around Congress and around the American people to transfer arms to Israel as it was conducting a genocide. Leaked documents showed that Secretary of State Biden lied to Congress. His own State Department staffers who were responsible for taking care of such matters told him that Israel was violating international law and violating American law in how it was using the weapons that the United States was supplying, and Biden basically ignored it. Israel has covered 70% of all of Israel's military costs since October 2023. Israel could not have done what it has done and what it is continuing to do without the unrestrained support of the United States. You can see here on the graph, that's the increase in American military aid since the war began. So what does all this mean? And how does all this connect to what's going on locally and nationally? The argument here is that over a long period of time, we have gotten used to what we have now. Trump didn't just descend from the sky onto all of us. The country has been preparing itself for this going back, I would say, at least as far back as 9/11, certainly as far back as the Iraq War, which was, some of you look like you're old enough to remember, a war that was fought on a lie. There were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Saddam Hussein had nothing to do with 9/11. So, and nonetheless, people who like to think of themselves as liberals, including former President Biden himself, voted for this war, promoted this war as some great statement in the name of protecting democracy and freedom. So our political leaders have been lying to us at least since the Iraq War. I would push it back a little bit since 9/11 for sure, because Afghanistan was also fought on a lie. And so thinking that, oh my God, the president is now telling lies every other day. Yeah, he tells more lies, and he's more blatant about it than has been the case for the last 25 years, but it's not new. So if it's not new, if what's happening in Gaza and what happened domestically to repress the opposition to America's complicity with a genocidal war against the people of the Gaza Strip, if that's not new, then we have to think of much bigger and much deeper ways of confronting it than just throwing the bums out. Because throwing the current bums out will bring us the bums who brought us how we got here. Thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Okay, Russell, thanks.
So I am Russell Lum. I came to Oregon to work in trade policy. This was 8 years ago. Seeing some faces I've known all this while, building power with unions and environmental organizations in Latin America, solidarity organizations, to raise a compelling politics that stops the global neoliberal agreement to continue to pass trade agreements and puts working people first across borders. That's what I was working on a few years, 8 years ago. Times have changed, especially as it relates to what's possible in trade policy, and even who the enemy is in trade policy now. We could circle back to that, or anybody could ask questions about what it might mean to make a compelling progressive trade policy in the Trump era. But I want to indeed talk about Trump. I also want to talk about my current work on staff in one of Oregon's larger unions. And I want to talk about how, on the volunteer side of my life, the work of Portland Jobs with Justice, a coalition of more than 100 participating organizations that works on collective power, community transformation, and justice, especially economic justice, needs kind of the attention of what kinds of organizations can meaningfully take power from the right, both locally and beyond. Let's just name what themes I want to touch on. I want to talk about taking power from Trump, and just to kind of raise some insights of the political moment we're in. I want to talk about how, like, ideologically, we've totally passed a moment where a lot of bipartisanship is possible and a lot of old-fashioned statesmanship where, like, you get along with the other side is possible. So I view that as like we're not going back. I'll talk more about it. I want to talk about how what I've seen in the work I've done working for Oregon Nurses Association is that the hottest shit is when we have the greatest number of people understanding the how of how we're going to surmount meaningful power. So that's what I mean by this third theme about being in an organized and organizing position. And then I just want to close with talking about how the movements for the long haul that are going to meet the moment, I think that there's a lot of sameness there as to what those movements look like, as to just what already fills our hearts and already meets the conditions of human belonging. So again, some insights that I'll close with that I hope are right to the apparently topic of tonight, caring for one another in extremely difficult times. So in Jan's introduction, my ears caught this phrasing, recognizing the bleakness of where we are and a movement capable of stopping it. I'm going to spend a lot of minutes on what might actually stop it. Like what really will meet the moment, and like I'll say like as the whole constellation of there's so many ways to put it, like progressive groups, groups working on the left, as the whole constellation of us, like do we feel we actually already have what it would take to meet the moment? And there's something kind of pulling on that question, right? I feel like if you say, well, nah, like, we're not really what we need, we don't have what it would take to meet the moment, that's demobilizing. But if you say the reverse, and you're like, yo, we have what we need to meet this fascist moment, that just seems like a lie, yeah. I guess. Well, let me just put the question back to this audience. Nobody's asked you anything yet tonight. We're going to go there. For how many ears tonight does it ring truer to you, and does it seem more meaningful to you in the organizing work that you're interested in? Yo, like, we have what it takes to meet this moment. Like, raise your hand. A few, and growing. Okay, and now raise your hand if it's like, yo, jury is out, like it's so clear we don't have what it takes to meet this moment. Or jury is in, rather. Jury's in. Yeah. Jury's in, okay. Jury's in, okay, yeah. And then undecided, or don't take the question. Okay. But I think what does bring us together and where we're starting is that, like, things are worse than they used to be. We're on our back foot, aren't we? On immigration, things are worse than they used to be. On Palestine, things are worse than they used to be. On climate, things are worse than they used to be. On civil and democratic rights, on health policy. And I guess the direction I want to go in is, where can we meaningfully wrest power from where it's being held over our necks? That's just it. I hope I'm not alone in fundamentally viewing the task ahead as going out and grabbing power and just using it better than it's currently being used. Because currently it's being used to exploit us, the most vulnerable, the worst, as it has always been. And we gotta go out and grab that power. I was kind of touched, I kind of dug it when I heard in the state legislature, of all places, I heard my own state rep say this quote. He was like, "Never apologize, and it's never wrong to go out and grab as much power as you can if you use it for good." And he said that to a room full of union members, and I applaud that. And I think that, we should not apologize. And remember, like, you know, the boot on our neck doesn't apologize either. So where can Trump's power actually be wrested from him in order to do some of the things that meet these moments? Well, let me ask another question. So I've been to on a beautiful sunny day, hands-off 50-51 protest. And then there have been more. How many people also have been to one of those? That's like almost everybody in the room. Okay. So think about it with me. Did you think, oh, this is where it's at? If we just did more of these, we would topple like the fascists, like boot over our neck. Did anybody think that? Or did we think like, yo, like, nice sunny day, like nice to express my views, like nice to see some comrades, but this is not doing it. Raise your hand if we just had more of these protests, like we would topple the fascist boot on our neck. A couple hands. Okay, raise your hand if not gonna do it, guys. Not gonna do it. Okay, more. Is that illustrative? Is that a helpful question? Both. Harriet says both.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay.
I agree 100%.
I think we need to always put on our organizing brain and view the attendance at a protest that doesn't meaningfully stop the fascism as a first step to getting those people to a kind of protest that would. And I think let's all think about what kinds of protests those might be. But I do think that Trump's power is fragile.
Yes.
I think Trump could be something on the order of like a lame duck president by running into problems, right? In fact, I'll detour a little bit and I'll share with you what struck me, like in this theme. 3 minutes. There was a tweet by Gabriel Wynant, and it goes like this, everybody. It's worth remembering how Bush's second term effectively ended in his first year, 2005, after Katrina, and the failure of Social Security privatization. He remained president, continued to do lots of harm, but never regained the political initiative. It's a different situation in lots of ways, but I really think we could do that to Trump. I dug that vision. I remember the last era of the Bush presidency and just laughing about it and not really like, it's a fucking joke, this guy's president, and his political capital had been taken from him. He did a lot of damage, there were foreign wars, but he wasn't a president with a mandate. I think if we're successful, Trump will be a president without a mandate in very short order, partly of his own doing, and partly because we found the magic of protests, direct actions that slow him down, that rattle him, that rattle Trump, or that rattle the aspects of administration that are doing it. Remember, very, very early on in this Trump administration, when there was some government office building in DC where the nascent Doge was like brainstorming the cuts and like it was like unaccountably like usurping all this power. And members of Congress went to the doors of this building. So people remember this kind of vision or what happened here? Members of Congress went to the doors and they were like, "Would you let us in? Like, what agencies are you cutting?" And the security guards were like, "Oh, we can't say anything about that. Like, we're not letting you in." And then all the members of Congress did, unfortunately, was kind of like look to the cameras and say, "What does it say that they won't let us in?" I don't think that wrested enough power from Trump. I think they should have burst through the doors. And I think we should look for opportunities that are kind of our version of bursting through those doors, going to the site where the fascism, as it were, is occurring. Theme 2, we're not going back. I don't think we're going back to a time when our politics can maybe be as genteel as they were. Remember in the first Trump administration when John McCain cast this iconic vote, and he was like the last stand, yeah? And he cast this iconic vote that stopped the Republican majority from destroying the Affordable Care Act. Well, John McCain's dead in so many ways. Like, there's no more John McCain. They're coming for Medicaid. And I think that our politics have to recognize that. Our politics have to recognize that we're not going back. We need a more muscular politics. We need to recognize that the Republican majority in Congress is so extreme. We need to be extreme in kind, or rather just a little more extreme. And I'll just give an example. We need to not be squeamish about unaccountable, horrible scale of death that's being caused by this Trump administration, and what kind of death occurs in response. This Free Luigi kind of icon, like this Free Luigi slogan, like the dude's in federal prison on terrorism charges. I think we need to be braver. We're not going back to a more genteel politics. That dude should be free. He killed one person who innovated the death of millions for profit. That's kind of my message around theme 2. In theme 3, I want to share with you that, so I work for Oregon Nurses Association. January and February, we had an 11 bargaining unit, 8 picket line strike. Does that sound familiar to anybody? Anybody know that, across the state, at Providence hospitals and other places, nurses and other caregivers were on strike 46 days. Well, they rejected a tentative agreement 2 weeks before the strike ultimately did end after the 46 days. They rejected a tentative agreement because, one of the reasons, because the tentative agreement didn't align their contracts to enough of a degree so that the next time they could continue to fight for power and the next time they could continue to have one another's backs. That's like nearly 5,000 people understanding a niche aspect about how to gain power. And it floored me. And it meant that the leaders of Oregon Nurses Association and coworkers of mine were teaching the how of how to grab power and how to stand for nothing less. So I want to encourage taking admiration from that, from the unions, being part of unions, and doing equivalents of that kind of reaching the masses, ordinary folks, people working, in the case of nurses, 12-hour shifts, who also understand that at the time of whether to continue an already month-long strike or not, that really going back the next cycle to have even more power and even more solidarity mattered the most. That's what they exhibited, and it blows my mind. That's where we have to continue to go. Lastly, folks, I wish for our social movements, as we try to do things like sustain the kinds of protests that can rattle the Trump administration, wrest power from the Trump administration and beyond. As we do that, we need the kinds of movements that welcome people giving different levels of time. We need the kinds of movements that allow the participation of people who have jobs, or people who have families, or people who have elderly folks they care for, and disabled folks. So we have these movements that reward like the Herculean efforts of a few in this country. And I would say we just salivate over what they have, like say in France, where in France, government threatened the removal of pensions, and like half of France went into the streets, and it stopped. I think we salivate over that level of participation for all. But let's get there. Let's create activist organizations that welcome small participations, but high knowledge. And let's just put into our social movements whatever it is like we really dig. Like if you really dig something socially, like if it makes you whole and all, like let's put that in your organizing, because then you'll stay in it. And it will help solve this problem of like, are you an activist or are you just a regular person? It's a super bad dichotomy, right? I'm probably looking at a lot of people who are just activists, but you know that like the whole rest of your contact list in your phone is probably just a lot of ordinary people. We got to break that dichotomy. And I think it comes from putting into our organizations everything that matters to us, including the backgrounds of our faith, the backgrounds of our communities, ethnic and otherwise, and just giving everything in a new way, right? Not giving everything by burning out, but giving everything, I think, with patience and with calm, with clear eye around how big the enemy is, and with a very, very, very long vision. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Russell. Ron, John.
What a night. It's like a night for truth-telling and storytelling, and it's pretty rad to be up here with these amazing people. I was told that, so I'm John Wasiutynski, I'm the Director of Sustainability. I'm here with my coworker, Monique Smiley, and we were like, oh, you're gonna have to be like, it's gonna be like a heavy, somber night, and you should like come with some like inspiration about all of us working together. But actually, this has been inspiring the whole way through, so I don't know that necessarily, yeah, thank you. A round of applause for these amazing presenters. So, the Multnomah County Office of Sustainability, we're a small team, but we work with many, hanging out before, I know so many faces in the room, people who've been in solidarity together on all these different fights over the years. We continue to fight together because we think that the world that we want is possible. Right? And so that's what we're here to talk about tonight, is building the world that we want together. And so for the past 5 years, we've been working alongside community organizations to first imagine what it's like for government and community to come together in the same space, share power, create a vision together of what that community ought to look like. So that's what we've done. First, we created the process, then we used that process to draft this climate justice plan that we're asking for more feedback on, right? A lot of times in community planning spaces, or government planning spaces, we, the bureaucrats, kind of get together in sequestered rooms with the other experts. We come down from our top floor suites and present our plans to the community to get your feedback, and then we say, okay, well, we'll change this little thing here or there, and now we have this plan, and then we'll promptly put that plan on a shelf, and things kind of remain the same. And we really want to invert and subvert that planning paradigm. So what we set out to do is to say, like, let's start with the communities that are most impacted by the climate crisis. And we know that the communities that are most impacted are the most marginalized communities within our society. Why are people marginalized in our society? We heard some of that tonight, right? Because of racism, colonialism, ageism, and we can go on from there, right? But we start with race because when you look across any kind of social justice indicator, race is often at the center of it, right? And then we have these other identities that we bring to us, our LGBTQIA plus identities, all these things. And so what we wanted to do is to start with that, with those communities. We had young people, we had Native American elders, people working on environmental justice, all come together, develop this 12 goals, because we wanted to start with a vision of what our community could be like. And those goals aren't like, well, we have 40% of our emissions coming from the transportation sector, so we ought to increase the number of charging stations at libraries. That's fine. But like, we were like, no, we want people to be able to get safely to where they need to go without having to get into a car, right? And, we should, reduce carbon dioxide emissions by 20%, by 2030 or whatever, whatever it is. No, we want clean air, we want clean water. And that's really the basis. Those are the goals in the plan. And then each goal has strategies, of course, associated with it. And with our steering committee, we try to find strategies that are targeted towards the groups that are furthest away from that goal. Okay, so everybody should be able to live in a neighborhood with abundant trees and nature, right? Well, who isn't living in those neighborhoods today? We know, it's people of color, right? And so with our limited government resources, we ought to go to those neighborhoods with the fewest trees and concentrate our resources in those neighborhoods, right? And so that's what the strategies are about. We need your help here to look at this plan because, we were a small group of people. And now we're going to a bigger group of people. We're going to people who really care about this, and we're asking for your help. Look at the plan. You don't need to read all 85 pages, although I welcome you to do it if you want. I'm really proud of it. But you can go to the thing that you care about, that resonates with you, and you're like, water's my thing, or food is my thing. I'm really worried about what extreme heat is doing to my community because it's really impacting older adults, right? And you can look at that section and you can say, and you can reach back out to us and say, this is incomplete. You missed this thing, and we'll include it. We know what the problem is, right? We know what the problem is. The problem is fossil fuel companies have been selling a poisonous product to our communities, to the world, knowing full well how destructive it is, and just profiting off of it, right? And so sometimes it feels really complicated. Like, why is it so difficult for us to solve this problem, right? We've been able to solve other environmental challenges. Why is it so hard to solve this environmental challenge, right? And the reason is because these powerful organizations have made us dependent on this energy source, but we don't need to be anymore, right? There are solutions out there. There is our human capacity for creativity. And we can solve this problem, but we have to do it together. We have to build power, right? So everyone had all these beautiful quotes and make them, they're so intelligent and just so inspirational. So I'll end with a quote that I've always, it's like when I first heard it, sent shivers down my spine. I really think it resonates with the theme of power, right? And this is from Dr. Martin Luther King. Power without love is reckless and abusive. Sound familiar, right? Power without love is reckless and abusive. And love without power is sentimental and anemic, right? That also sounds familiar. Power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. So yes, let's go get that power, and let's use it to build a loving community that we need. Monique is signaling that we're ready for questions.
Our folks from our Rumble team walking around collecting questions, hopefully, and then we can bring some up here. In the meantime, I think we have a couple, maybe Kate, do you want to talk about an action that's happening? Is Kate around here? Kate? May 15th, which is next week, after what Kate's going to be talking about, but next week we have a Tributary Alliance meeting at Lloyd Center at the Braided River Gallery space, which is kind of where the old, towards Lloyd Center, towards the old Nordstrom. There's a space there, a beautiful space, and John and Monique will be there to talk about, in depth about this plan. And so I hope that you can come. It's at 12:15 p.m. We gather at 11:45, and the meeting starts at 12:15, and these folks will be here to talk in depth about this climate justice plan.
Who has heard of Zenith Energy? Excellent. All right. So I'm going to keep it short. You all know what we're talking about, but this next coming week is a really big week for folks who want to engage in the public process for the air permit that Department of Environmental Quality is considering giving to Zenith so they can continue polluting in our communities. So, 2 important dates. One is next Monday, May 12th. That's the in-person rally. It's going to be fun. There's pizza, music, camaraderie, comments. Come join us at University of Portland, Buckley Center Auditorium. The address, you can find it on a number of websites. Our website, ColumbiaRiverkeeper.org, but it's 5000 North Willamette Boulevard. Look for the yellow fire truck, you'll find us, and we're really encouraging folks to show up at that one, to really show DEQ how much opposition there is to this harmful operations in our community. The second date, if you can't make it in person, is May 15th. That is Thursday, and that is the virtual public hearing, so if you can't, if for whatever reason you want to join virtually, you can make comments on the 15th. The final deadline as of now for submitting comments to DEQ is May 30th at 5 p.m. But you don't really have to remember that because there's comment table over there by the door, and everybody can take their time to write some comments today. We will make sure that those comments get to DEQ, and I hope you all can join us on the 12th as we let DEQ know that they should definitely say no to this pending permit. Thank you.
We don't have a ton of questions, but I'm going to go through them, and then I hope that you'll also ask questions of each other, too, and make this a dialogue. One question is, what do you see as the biggest local barrier to success?
I'll take the opportunity to say just something that I like to grouse about whenever I get the opportunity, which is similar to what you were saying, Russell, earlier about how we need more opportunities for all kinds of people to engage in things. I just think that we have such an opportunity to get creative about the ways in which we invite people to engage with these issues. So if you don't see a way for a busy working mom to be able to engage, think about how it is that you could build one, right? And work with an organization to make that happen. I could go on about it, but that's just what initially comes to my mind, is that there's a lot of inaccessible activism opportunities out there, and I would love to see just way more types of things available to more types of people.
I would just love to give a shout out to the Rumble team, right? Because the success kind of looks like Rumble. And whenever we've done an action in the Multnomah County boardroom, Rumble shows up, you all wear red, and the local elected officials take notice, right? Because it doesn't take too much to show what kind of power there is out there for these ideas. And so the threshold for success can often be lower than people think. So if you could just kind of convince your compatriots that hey, show up for this thing, just a handful of people can make a difference.
I'm just going to add, I do agree with you. Accessibility is critical. Activism is different for each and every one of us. Just because Cass and I are comfortable up here exposing our faces, taking that risk, not everyone can do that. And there are multiple, 100 ways that you can help. And it's as simple as asking your colleague, your immigrant, your whoever, how can I help you? What can I do to allow you to feel more safe, to allow you to feel comfortable navigating what's going on? So to me, it's as simple as building that coalition, talking to your neighbors, being aware and being present.
Okay, notwithstanding the amazing things our speakers are doing in their daily lives, many of these talks have been vague in general. Any specific ideas on how various interest groups in the area can work together? How do we work together?
So I'm going to selfishly take an advantage to speak to that and advertise in the process. Portland, CDX, Portland, Contra los Deportaciones. Oh my God, I can't even say it. Thank you. We're partnering with the groups doing the Tesla and ICE protests on Mondays and Saturdays. We are going to do a Wednesday, once a month, political art installation type of protest. We're going to get the fire truck out there. We're going to have Trump pinatas for everybody to buy raffle tickets and take advantage of and get your frustrations out. Those are different ways that we can invite people in. So come out on the 21st of May. We'll be at the ICE facility doing something a little bit different, and we're going to see how that works. And I really hope that this becomes a thing where it's less about the march, and it's more about just visualization of an expression of our frustrations and being big and loud.
Something on that, I didn't see the back of this card. how do we reach out to the American mainstream, which was never really mentioned.
I thought this was the mainstream.
How do we reach out to the mainstream, folks?
Yeah, so one concrete thing that's been rattling around in my brain is that there's currently an effort underway to try to get initiative petition to get an item on the 2026 Oregon statewide ballot. Would be called the Equal Rights for All Amendment. It would be an Oregon constitutional amendment that would enshrine the right to reproductive health care and abortion, same-sex marriage, and gender-affirming health care in the Oregon Constitution. So that would be really, really game-changing and important, because in American history, we've only ever been able to claw forward towards progress by trying it out in a jurisdiction like Oregon and then watching it catch fire and take place in other places. And so I really think it would be great if you as an individual and any organizations and groups that you're a part of could throw your weight behind that initiative. And I'm working to try to get the Sierra Club to endorse it, because even though we are not primarily concerned with reproductive rights and LGBTQ rights, we understand that we are all connected, and that's part of what fighting for human nature is all about. And so I would encourage us all to try to find those unlikely allies in the fight for that ballot measure, who might not necessarily be thought of as an endorser, and you try to get them to be an endorser, get them to support that measure, and go out and gather some signatures, help get it on the ballot. Democracy is not a spectator sport. That's an example of a very specific thing that we can do individually and collectively to make a difference.
Yeah, I'll follow Damon in making a policy remark and just say that there is low-hanging fruit right now in the Democratic majorities in the Oregon legislature to pass pro-immigrant bills. And unfortunately, it takes the crisis moment of the Trump administration's mass deportation efforts. But there is a whole slate of excellent immigration policies being put forth by pro-immigrant organizations and especially faith-based organizations. And you writing your legislator to support those does make an enormous difference. But I think just even more than writing your specific legislator, who's probably already on board, just recognizing that legislative mood swings, and we should be riding the waves when it can benefit us. We should be enshrining these things in state law when we can. Right now we have momentum on pro-immigrant bills. My employer, Oregon Nurses Association, a constant lobbying entity in the legislature, is endorsing and finding the connections and making sure immigrants know their rights. Right, one of these bills, it puts state money towards educating those who could legalize their status if only they had the support to and the know-how to. So we basically turned some folks who are undocumented into documented through an investment by the state of Oregon. Let's keep doing that. And again, let's capitalize when mood swings. Unfortunately, we're on the other side of the swing on racial justice and police reform right now. But we're on a swing where a lot of immigration policy is possible locally.
Okay, this is for you, Joel. How can we get out the message that opposing the war in Gaza is not anti-Semitic? Okay, how can we get out the message that opposing the war in Gaza is not anti-Semitic?
So I didn't tell you anything about myself, and I'll take this opportunity to do that. I'm Jewish. My entire immediate family lives in Israel. I'm the black sheep. My niece was taken hostage on October 7th, 2023. She was returned 54 days later in the first negotiated hostage exchange deal. Her husband was killed on October 7th defending their kibbutz, which was attacked. My niece's name is Liat. Distant relatives who are filmmakers have made a film about the family's experience, and it's called Holding Liat. It's going to have its North American premiere at the Tribeca Film Festival in New York in June. It's already won first prize for documentary at the Berlin International Film Festival, which makes it qualified for an Oscar nomination. In the film, Liat says, "I don't want revenge. I want a better life for my children and the children of Gaza." So, where you stand on genocide has nothing to do with what you think about Jews. It has to do with whether you support genocide or not. And I don't see how decent people can be supporting genocide. So there has been, for sure, weaponization of Holocaust trauma, weaponization of accusations of anti-Semitism. The entire hierarchy of the Democratic Party is totally corrupted by that, with very, very few examples. The entire Republican Party is corrupted by everything, so we don't even have to talk about them, but they're the ones that are beating the drums and pushing for colleges and universities to make it more difficult to hold pro-Palestinian protests, encampments, and some of the people who are doing that are outright anti-Semites. I mean, remember that in President Trump's first term, when there was the demonstration at Charlottesville where neo-Nazis were chanting, "Jews will not replace us," he said, well, there were fine people on both sides. So the people who are waving the flag of anti-Semitism, many of them are anti-Semites. They should not be given a free pass on that. The people who are wrapping themselves in the flag of anti-Semitism to protect Israel while it's carrying on a genocide should be called out and said, you all, Chuck Schumer at the top of the Democratic hierarchy, you all are collaborators with genocide.
Yes. Yes.
Russell, do you think a general strike would be effective, and why wait until 2028?
I think premise in the question is this idea that a couple of the large unions have called for us all thinking about whether we could effectively general strike in 2028. I support that. I think the impetus comes from the UAW's national president, Sean Fain, who asked fellow unions to see about aligning contract end dates to the particular time in 2028 to be part of like motivating a general strike. I think that's helpful. I think a general strike, short of the participation of unions, is folly. I think that looks like a protest that comes and goes. That partly just be out of just numbers of ordinary people who would participate, right? I think that's the bar. Can we pull off a general strike? Well, can we organize enough so that enough people would literally be in the streets in a way that conveys the pressure that it's meant to? I know that at the most concerted days of action, like pro-immigrant days of action that have occurred on May Days in the past, or May Day protests generally, it does look like there's thousands of people in the street. Those are planned for differently, right? Those are come out once. Whereas a general strike where you'd have thousands of people like applying their feet on the street for a shared goal, that would be hard to convince people of for a long haul that would actually win that goal. But I hope we get there. And I will pitch, and this was actually like in my action step slide, is that you should come scheme with us in what we call the Portland Workers Assembly, where the idea of approaching a general strike in 2028 is considered, and we consider the partnerships that we'll need and the infrastructure that we'll need to be effective. But again, I think we do need we need a union-minded approach to the power of a strike.
Russell, you have a slide up there on that?
Yeah, if we could get the clicker, it's like way back there.
Oh no.
But it doesn't say a lot. It just says there's a thing called Portland Workers Assembly. The next time we're meeting is May 24th, and you should come dream and scheme about helping to plant the seeds of Portland's version of the planned general strike. There it is.
Okay.
10 to noon at the PAT office.
That's where it is, yes. It's at the Portland Association of Teachers Hall, 10 to noon, May 24th.
Okay, we just have a couple more questions. One is for John and Monique. This one is, will the plan, the climate justice plan, not just plant trees, just plant, but also take care of the street trees? That's a very specific, I don't know.
So this is actually a good point. There's Multnomah County, the famous kind of formulation from what Multnomah County does is we take care of the needy and the naughty, right? We essentially run the social safety net system. It's not perfect formulation. We also run the libraries. We run elections. We have a lot of really basic services for the healthy functioning of our community, clinics, but also the public safety system, and our powers are limited. But what we need to do to address climate change is vast. And so the plan has strategies that actually not only name things that we, Multnomah County government, should do, but it includes things that other governments should do. So maybe it's a state law that needs to be changed. Maybe it's a City of Portland law that needs to be changed, or a City of Gresham law that needs to be changed. And so we name those other organizations. And we also leave space for the idea that we also need to help each other. Mutual aid needs to be a part of our planned collective action. And so, yes, if we're gonna plant trees, we're gonna water them. I'm watering trees. I just had a meeting about this a couple of days ago, watering trees this summer. So the trees that we've been responsible for planting, we're watering. But we'll also, we also send reminders to neighbors who have planted trees in front of their yard, like, hey, it's getting hot out, time to water that tree. And if you know what, I'm just gonna deputize everyone here. If you see a tree this summer and it looks thirsty, I'm authorizing you to water it. I'm the sustainability director for Multnomah County. I have that
Okay, thanks for that. Folks really want to know more about the protest that's coming up. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. All right, so the 21st, it is literally going to be a rally, possibly a march. Definitely going to have those Trump piñatas, so come out and get your frustrations out. You can bring your own bat and name it whatever you want. But yes, so it is kind of just an expansion on, actually what it is allowing those of us in the group, we're growing. I've only been a part of it, like 3 months? 3 months, yeah, and it's already grown a lot, so much so that we have a couple of different kind of offshoots of fundraising group, and we've got our ICE protest. And the ICE protest, we're partnering with the group that's, I forgot their name, what is it? The Tesla Takeover Group. Thank you, Cass. So we're partnering with them. We're going to support them. They're going to support us. They tend to have 300 to 400 people show up for their rallies on either day. So it's kind of going to be this, building a coalition, right? The bigger, stronger, more people we have, the better. But we want to do something that's dare I say, is social media prevalent. Like, it's visual, it's big, it's huge, it's got colors, a different type of protest. I also think that's, and we, the proverbial we, think that the Portland community is a hub of artists, a hub of people who have that voice and want to get out. So we're going to start off with our fire truck with Trump in a jail cell with the flag burning behind him, type of a thing, and then at some point in time transition to fundraising with those Trump pinatas. So partnering with the Tesla movement, they're amazing, they're with us. So come out. It's a work in progress, but we would love the support, we would love the feedback, and that's kind of where we're going with it. At the ICE building, do we have the address? So it's going to be the 21st, May 21. We're going to start at 3:30, and then it's going to go to 5:30, and the idea is disruptive. We want to be there. Yeah, catch them when they're leaving their shift. We want to put them on point. We want to be big. So if you show up, bring your pans, bring your bang bang things, anything to be loud and big. And depending on the size and the nature and how it's going, we may end up marching down to the waterfront. And that may be where we have our pinatas, and who knows, we're just planning it, but that is the bare minimum. It may be bigger. It's probably going to be bigger. We're a creative, ambitious bunch. So please. I'm sorry? What? Monthly, yes, monthly. Again, if you sign up on our sign-up sheet, I am more than happy to email you the link for our events. And that will, as it grows, we'll have our flyers, it'll have our information, who's speaking, what the intended message is for each rally. That may morph, because it's not just the Mexican community that's being targeted, it's the Somali, everybody who's an immigrant is being targeted. So we're looking at kind of creating a community or rally, safe, family friendly, and would love to see you.
Great. Any other questions that you have for each other, or anybody else have a question? It seems like we've gone through them all. This is the last opportunity. Yeah?
Yeah, the coordination between the county and the city, because the Portland Clean Energy Fund has a lot of funds, and they're working on shade equity and taking care of those trees and planting more. So I just was wondering if you could speak to the coordination between the county and the city on some of these climate justice work.
Yeah, and sorry I've been quiet tonight. I will be a lot more chatty at the meeting next week. But yes, throughout this entire process, the city of Portland has been supportive, including their staff at Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, building relationships with us, with community partners, and the steering committee. And yes, the city's supportive, the mayor's supportive, and there is a lot of appetite to, have the plan be invested through PSEF. And so, in order to implement the plan, it is going to take a lot of money, and we do have some elected officials at the county who are supportive in looking how we can allocate some of those PSEF dollars to our plan. But there is a partnership, and it's a work in progress, and the community has talked about that a lot. It's just how and when.
If you sign up, make sure you sign in over on the table back there. If you'd like to hear more, get more information about upcoming rumbles, there'll be one in June at Green Anchors, right on the river. We're kind of bringing it back home to the river. We'll be focusing on the super fund and kind of what's going on with that. Big thanks to our panelists. And thank you all for coming out. We've got a lot of work to do, and we can do it.